Indeed, God is present here and now, and in that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother, God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open, to be receptive. As we allow the realization of your presence in our lives right now, in this moment, we open our hearts to the flow of your love. We allow your love to flow through us into this moment, illuminating this moment, transforming this moment, transforming us. And in this transformation, we give thanks. So it is that together we say, Amen. Answer the call. How many of you carry a cell phone?
Everyone.
Now, wait a minute. How many of you carry a cell phone? Okay. All right. So what do you do when it rings, buzzes, beeps, or flashes, whatever, right? Most people at least look at it, right? I don't want to talk to that jerk. Yeah. Or, excuse me, I need to take this call. You know, there's a study done by Sheldina Misra. She's a professor in urban affairs at Virginia Tech, and she and a team had an experiment, constructed experiment, where she set up conversations among 100 people, conversations one-on-one, and noticing from a distance what was going on in the conversation. They found that in those conversations where a cell phone, even if it was turned off, where a cell phone was visible to the people in the conversation, for instance, it's on the table, even face down, even just being present, they found that the conversation was very shallow, mostly related to the doings of life, right? I mean, we can talk about doings of life without getting very involved, right? But when the feelings are expressed, now that's a deeper conversation, and they found that when the cell phone was present in the conversation had to do more about doings rather than feelings. And what they concluded from that was that while it was not expressly it was not expressed by the participants in the study, what they found, what they inferred from that was that when you have a cell phone that is visible in a gathering of 2 or 3 or 4, what you're doing is you're leaving the portal to your greater network open. And you are reducing your commitment to this particular conversation. Does that make sense? So just the implication of your being willing to take a call, whether you do or not, just the implication was that it caused the conversations to be less engaging, less intensive, less quality. So maybe after this, you won't actually answer the call if you're in conversation with someone. But actually, I digress. I thought that was an interesting experiment. That's not what this talk is about. This talk is about answering the call, responding to those things that we are called to be involved in our lives. And so taking personal responsibility in the influences that are calling you to be involved. And I think that most of us would say that we are living in interesting times. Would you not? There's an old Chinese proverb that It's actually a Chinese curse that says, "May your life be filled with interesting times." And I think about that, and maybe there's something about that. Maybe that is a curse after all. I mean, I've always enjoyed the interesting times, but maybe it's not a blessing but a curse. Well, we're certainly involved in interesting times now. Mao Zedong was considered by the Dalai Lama to be one of his greatest spiritual teachers. And I'm certainly finding that in today's environment. I have a visceral response to some of the things that are going on in our society, and for me to regain my composure, regain my spiritual footing, regain my centeredness, can be challenging. So I certainly understand what the Dalai Lama was saying as he said that Mao Zedong was one of his greatest spiritual teachers. Mao, as you know, was responsible for the Cultural Revolution. He was responsible for the subjugation of Tibet. He was responsible for the shelling of many of the Buddhist enclaves. And I'm trying to remember the name of the significant Buddhist enclave that was destroyed, literally destroyed, with hundreds of casualties during the subjugation of Tibet. But nonetheless, what I'd like to address is, how do we respond to those things in our lives that call us? It would be fair to say that one of the primary functions of our emotions is to bring us to some level of activity. Maybe we shift in our chair a little bit, or maybe we actually get up and do something when we are called to respond, when our emotions rise up. Certainly in the caveman days, fear was a major contributor to our action. Go grab the club and beat off the attackers. And that same fear is a part of our visceral response today. There is an opportunity that becomes apparent when our emotions start to get our attention. And those emotions may be emotions of engagement or emotions of disengagement. There may be emotions of fear or frustration or outright rage. There may be emotions of love, of sadness. There may be, I saw a clip last night that was very touching, and I sat there. It was about an immigrant from Iraq who had his own child was born with severe disabilities, and so he was put into a position where he had to care for his child, who I gathered subsequently died, and he and his wife decided that they would become foster parents of terminally ill children, where the parents had abandoned the children. And this fellow, he was a bearded big bear, just a monster of a man. And the size of his heart was extraordinary, because when his wife died of cancer about 3 years ago, but he continued to be a foster parent for these terminally ill children. And he said that he's had 10 or so children in his care over the course of his time as a foster parent. But he was, at the time of this report, at the time of this video, he was caring for a child who had microencephaly. And she couldn't hear, and she couldn't see. The only thing that she could respond to was touch. And to see this man care for this child with such a loving touch. And it was one of those, oh my God, how can a person put themselves into a position of caring for and loving a child that they know is going to leave them soon, and then turn right around and do it again? What size of heart must this man have? Well, he was called. He was called because of his own child. He was called because he felt that this was something that he could do. And he responded in this extraordinary way of helping these children who had been abandoned, that had a few months or perhaps a year or two left on the planet. And he put himself out there to be hurt repeatedly. So, answering the call. The emotions are a way to get our attention. This is something that we need to pay attention to. And the question is, how do we respond? How do we respond to those emotions? How do we respond in a way that is constructive? Jesus offered us this in the parable of the talents. In Matthew 25:14 to 20. For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Now, a denarii was considered to be a day's labor, a day's wage for a laborer in the time of Jesus. And a talent is 6,000 denarii. Okay? So he is giving to one of his slaves 30,000 denarii. That is enough wage that a person would earn in about 100 years. Okay? So here this slave master is giving to one of his slaves 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, yes, come back. His master said to him, well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in many things. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. And his master said to him, well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. And here you have what is yours. But his master replied, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would receive what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to those who have, more will be given, and those who will have in abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. A commonly known parable. Turns out that it's said that this parable was actually the source of our English word talent, that is, gifts. Because from a metaphysical perspective, the talents are considered to be spiritual gifts. So here we have 3 slaves. Each of the slaves is given a resource to use. Now think about this. From our perspective, when we are out in the world, what are the talents that we have? What are the spiritual gifts that we have? Do we use them, or do we bury them? Are we afraid to use our talents? Are we afraid to use our spiritual gifts? If so, then we are indeed like this slave that received only 1 talent and buried it. Are we afraid to respond to the call that we are presented? Are we willing to answer the call? This parable tells us that, hey, don't be afraid to step out there. Regardless of what you think you know, you may in fact know much more than that. Regardless of what you think your gifts are, your gifts may indeed be significantly more than that. So the question is, how do we respond to those emotional cues that we are given? How do we get into a way of responding to the influences of our world that allow us, that empower us to be like the first or second slave? There is a Course in Miracles. Many of you know that I grew up on A Course in Miracles. And in the introduction, there is this. Come on. The Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love. There's a couple of paragraphs prior to this. But the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This Course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The implication of this is that fear, while we think fear is very real, it is not. The only thing that exists is love. And when we are experiencing fear in our response to those calls that come to us, then what we're doing is we're responding to an illusion, and that is disempowering to us. What is empowering to us is to respond in love, to know that love, unconditional love, is always available to us, and unconditional love is something that we can always offer. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And knowing that allows us to be with the peace of God. Think about that. We hear this call. We have this emotion that says, step up, rise up, do something. Get involved. Make a plan. Execute the plan. Be productive. And then we have on the other side that part of personality that says, oh, no, you don't have talent for that. You don't have the resources for that. People are going to laugh at you for thinking that you can do something about that. And so we allow fear to get in the way of our moving, of our standing up, of our getting involved. And that is such a waste. Such a waste. such a waste of our emotion, such a waste of our talents, even the talents that we don't know that we had. So this idea that we have the opportunity to offer our gifts to the world and we shrink back out of fear. We can choose to do that. But when we do, we're going to be cast into darkness. We're going to find that we will say to ourselves, oh man, I should have done something. I should have stepped up when I had the opportunity. This big bear of a man, he stepped up. He stepped up. And he saved the time that these children had on this planet by embracing them in love, caring for them as they entered into their final phase of life on this planet. And they experienced love. Think about that. Think about, here's a child abandoned by the parents for whatever reason, economic or emotional or whatever reason, the child abandoned by the parents. And where are they? Think about this one child that couldn't hear, couldn't see. And the only thing that she could experience in this world was touch. And here she was put in the care of a big bear of a man with a huge heart and a loving touch. And while she had a few months in his care, or a year, 2 years at the time of the video, she was still in his care. But here was a man offering this love. The only thing that he could do for her was offer her love and a kind touch. Whew. So, Jesus offered us this. He said, there are several things I'd like you to know. And the things that I'd like you to know is help the poor, the widows, and the orphans. Welcome and help immigrants. Honor each and every person as a child of God. Turn the other cheek. Be nonviolent in thoughts, words, and actions. These teachings that he offered us are teachings that allow us to respond in love. They allow us to empower ourselves and to reach out and to comfort those in need when those in need may not have any other source for love and comfort. So here we have in the teachings of Jesus, these, well, there are more than this, but these stand out for me. And if we're going to call ourselves a Christian nation, as I said last week, if we're going to call ourselves a Christian nation, let's pay attention to the teachings of Jesus. What are you called to do? What are the things that stir you? There's a group, the Alive, Awake, Aware. Did I get that right? Alive, Alert, Awake, Alive, Awake, Aware group that meets after service on Sunday. And the intention of this group is to identify and step into the needs of our community. We have right now a school supply drive that's going on, and it's going to go on for probably another couple of months. But we have the opportunity to help kids who are out of school supplies, to offer them crayons, markers. I got a batch of tissues. And we have the opportunity to step up and to help these kids have fewer obstacles in their learning environment because they will have the tools that they need. Wow, that's stepping up. That's addressing the need that we have in our community. And that idea of stepping into those activities with love, with an appreciation that we may in fact be the only talent that is available to respond to that need. It's powerful stuff. We come away from that activity and we come away realizing, wow, I did make a difference. It may have been just a little difference, but I made a difference. I responded to those things that seemed to need a response. Frank Giudice, who is one of he was one of my Bible teachers. Turns out he passed shortly after I was in his class. But Frank Giudice offered us this piece of wisdom. This piece of wisdom. I am one with the one, and that ultimate responsibility is mine. We cannot, in our awareness of who we are in the grand scheme of things, step back from the realization that we are one with the one. We are one with the one. And therefore, what needs to be done is ultimately my responsibility. So what role do I take in responding to the needs that I see? How will I step up? How will I participate in this solution that we all need to be part of? Unconditional love. Dissolving the fear. Stepping forward. And participating. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, let us come in with, I cast all my cares. As we rest in this moment, just take an inventory of what's going on in your mind. Breathe into this moment and check. What is it that encourages me, engages me, enthuses me in this moment? What have I run across in the last day, 2 days, 3 days, where I felt an emotional stirring? How was that stirring realized? How was it experienced? Was it a call for me to do something? Was it a call for me to step up? And what was my response? Was it fear? Was it joy? Was it enthusiasm or was it hesitancy? Hesitancy, of course, is a symptom of fear. And all of those responses that were in the spectrum of fear are telling us something. They're telling us that we indeed have an engagement, but that we're allowing fear to rule us. But of course, in miracles tells us that only love is real, that fear is an illusion. And our empowerment comes from releasing the fear, letting it go. So revisiting those things that have caused us fear may be our next action. We pay attention to those, release the fear, and see what emerges from that. Answering that call will empower us, will bring us into the joy of the Master. We are one with the One. Fear can be a teacher, but it doesn't need to be the dictator. Resting with that fear, transforming that fear, allowing that fear to subside as we realize that love exists. Feeling that love rise within us. How do we respond? And with this in mind, let us come back, sharing the words of Alleluia.